Hello everybody and welcome to Let's Talk About Colouring Lesson 10. My name is Tatiana and I'm an Independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in Australia. I have been creating this live video series on Facebook over a time period now, and we've been looking at the different colouring methods of Stampin' Up products. We've been comparing the same colours using different products, using the same stamp set and the same layout for the card. And the goal of this series was to show you different techniques and the different visuals that you get using different mediums, because each medium gives you a different effect so that you can choose exactly what you would like for your projects. Today is the final lesson and it's lesson 10, and we will be looking at a technique that you can use with some of the colouring methods. We're only going to be using two: watercolouring using the inks and stamping blends, but it's a no line technique. So I'm really excited to share this with you. It's a little bit, I guess, a bit more advanced to what I was sharing in the previous lessons, but I thought it would be a good one to finish off the series. I'm really excited. I've prepped all ready for it, and let's just head to the craft test. Oh, before I do, if you see the little red live there, you'll know that you're watching live, and please say hi and let me know. I do enjoy the company and the chat. If you don't feel like saying hi, it's okay too. If you're watching on YouTube, this is definitely a recording, and if you don't see the live on Facebook, that means this recording is the recording. But please still leave a comment and let me know what you think, and if you've tried no line colouring technique. Let's head to the craft desk. Fabulous. Now, this is once again a colouring technique, and we've been using the same layout every week. Been using the To a Wild Rose stamp set, and the reason why I chose this stamp set was that it has this beautiful bold image that we can colour in different methods, and we can also stamp it. So that was what we did in the first lesson. Tonight we're going to be looking at no line colouring, and for that I have already pre-stamped and die cut all our pieces. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that you're back at the gym on Wednesday, Erin. Yay. So this is looking a little bit different to it has previous weeks. I've stamped these in Sahara sand. You don't have to use Sahara sand. You just need some sort of light color, and I've stamped off twice before stamping, and that gives us a faint outline of the leaves. So you can just see that some of it's a bit darker than the rest of it, but it's okay. It's just the whole point is the faint outline. And I have started already on the yellow here because watercolor takes a little bit of time to dry and it's a bit humid, and I wanted to get started. Now, the thing with watercolor is that you need to let each petal, when you're doing a flower or if you're doing a different image, each section dry in between before you paint the next section next to it. For example, I've painted this petal and left this one and this one blank. I can't go in and paint these three petals until this one and this one have dried, otherwise the ink will bleed into that. And I can just see that that is still a little bit wet. So we're going to put that one to the side, and we will start with the watercoloring just simply because it does take a little bit of time to dry. Hello Renee, thank you for joining me. Now, this is my favorite method of picking up watercolor. I'll just put it here on screen for a second. I simply take the ink pad, so for example the Bermuda Bay. Hello Chloe. And I've just pressed it into the big, what is it, the E or the F block? I can never remember. It's the F block. So it's the largest block we have for our mounting our stamps, and I have found it to be an excellent palette. And so I've just dipped those, and I have my aqua painter all ready to go, filled with water. Remember, the aqua painters have that little line marking to where you fill the water up. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to, no, don't lean that. I'm going to take that just so we can see that. I'm going to start on the leaf here, and I'm taking the Bermuda Bay color and adding some water to it. Hi Glenda, thank you for joining me. Lovely to see people hopping on, saying hi. Now with the leaves, they're a bit more, I think, simple compared to the flower, so we can paint each leaf. And I guess you don't really need the stamping for the leaf because the die cut does cut it out quite that. But there we go. So hello Sarah, thanks for joining me. So you can see I've coloured that bit in now, and you can't really see any of the stamping, which is perfect for the technique we're trying to achieve tonight. I'm going to do that to all 3 leaves, and the third one. And we've got the base colour down, and now I'm going to paint in the stem. Of course you can do this before die cutting. I've just simply done it after. I've done the die cutting beforehand just so that it's easier for this video. And now I'm going to start taking some of the ink that I haven't mixed in with water, and while this is still wet, it's a bit of that wet on wet technique that I shared in this series, and adding the shadowing. And so I want to add a bit of the vines in as well. Just adding that. I like the darker area to be on the base of the leaf. You can do this any way you want, really. You could be just adding those spines in, and we're going to let that sit and dry before we add some more detail. So this method's really good for if you're not confident in freehand drawing and you want that beautiful watercolor look without the stamped image, but you're not confident in creating the shape. No line stamping, it would be really for you. So I've just grabbed my chamois to wipe off that brush. I'm going to rotate that into our third color, which is Granny Apple Green, and repeat the same process with the other leaf. This one has a bit more ink to it, but as I'm coloring, you can see that the Sahara sand print or the stamping is kind of bleeding or blending in with the wet, because it's also a water-based ink. The water absorbs it a bit and it bleeds into the color that we're placing down, and that's what makes it become no line. It makes it the lines disappear. Geez, we're very quiet tonight, unless I'm missing comments. I don't know. And I don't mind. You'll just hear me chatting more. So I'm doing the exact same method as I did for the Bermuda Bay. Now grabbing the darker color and letting that bleed. Looks natural. Thank you, Glenda. Yes, it is a more artistic, natural look compared to stamping. But what's really cool is that you know that there was a stamped image underneath. But you've got a bit more freedom. And yeah, it's certainly a very different look, and that is exactly why I am sharing it in this series of videos, because it's extremely different to whatever we've explored these last 10 lessons. Now I feel like that one's dry enough for me to start adding that more detail. So for that detail, I've got just picking up, hello Holly, thanks for joining. I'm just picking up tiny amounts of the ink on the tip of my brush. I am not squeezing the aqua painter at all, and I am just placing that ink very gently, very lightly onto the image, and it is spreading, and that's all fine by me. I'm enjoying that. You can keep building. So I'm just going to wipe the Granny Apple and get back into the Bermuda Bay and add some more detail to the leaves over here. So once the image dries more, the details you add spread less. You can see there that vein is not spreading as much as it is in the darker areas where it's still a bit wet. So you want to allow it to dry if you want more sharp detail. If you want the detail to be less sharp and more watery and flowy, then add it on while it's still wet. And you just keep building until you get the amount of detail and that. So we shall see how we go for tonight. So that's the leaves. I'm quite happy with that look of the leaves. I could go back and add more, but I won't for now. I'm bringing in the daffodil yellow, and I now can start colouring adjoining. So I'm going to start over here because that petal is dried now, and so I can bring colour in safely next to it without it bleeding. So I start with a pale, oh, my phone's telling me the battery is low. Excuse this momentary shake. Ooh, trying to get the cord so it doesn't go into my ink. White cord and ink, it's not a good combination. And just need to, oh, nope, the message disappeared. Fabulous. Okay, so now I'm going to take darker colour and add that in, and the wet on wet method allows it to spread. And what I do is I keep adding more to the bottom of the petal to get that shadowing there, as so. Bring that in, and so. And we can colour this petal over here, add a bit more water. So my tip with this is when you're watercolouring, the no line colour method is to add layers, keep it soft, and just add small layers and build on the colour. Don't rush it, because if you start rushing you'll get bleeding and you might not get quite the look you're after. But it could be fun to see what you can get as well. So I mean, it's really up to you. I prefer not to rush and let it dry and spread and work my way in, and when it's dry you can then go in with some extra details. We can definitely do this petal over here as well, and that one. And then I'm going to let this one sit and dry for a bit, and we'll switch over to the stamping blends, and I'll show you how to do that using the stamping blends, which is concept is similar. Less, I guess, less effort because you don't have to let things dry in between. You have more control over that. But a different finished product, really, being blends versus watercolor. Over here, paint this petal in. I haven't mentioned the paper. I am currently using the Fluid 100. It's a watercolor paper, and that's why it's taking and holding the water quite nicely. I highly recommend this paper if that's what you want to do. If you're doing the no line watercoloring technique, this is the paper to use. You'll get the best results with it. Okay, and we can do that one petal down here as well. This is an internal. Hello Priscilla, how are you? For those who are just joining, I am sharing the no line watercolor technique. It's a fun technique, and I'm showing it in two different mediums. So currently I'm using the ink as watercolor, and I'm painting it on. And we're going to set that aside to dry. I'm going to move this out of the way. We can put those here while they dry, and we're going to bring in our second set. These, hello Anne, thank you for joining me. These have been stamped on the Whisper White thick cardstock, and I'm going to be using the exact same colors but using the stamping blends. For For those who are not familiar, these are alcohol-based markers by Stampin' Up. They are that you can buy 2 versions in each color that's available. So basically what I'm saying is that I have here the Bermuda Bay Light and the Bermuda Bay Dark, and you use them together. And I have again stamped this in Sahara Sand, stamped off twice and then stamped. And we're going to color the leaf in. So same thing, I'm going to start off with the Bermuda Bay Dark because this is my preference, and when using the stamping blends, there's no right or wrong answer really, but I'm laying down the dark color and I always go beyond where I want it, and you'll see what I mean. I'm now taking the light and outlining firstly the leaf, and then I'm going to blend the color in to each other. Now with the stamping blends, sometimes you can freak out that it's not quite looking right, but just let it sit. As the alcohol evaporates, it does change the way it looks a little bit, and you may find that you like the effect more. So I'm using the same placement of dark and light colors really as I did on the watercolor just before, but I'm just simply using the stamping blends. And as you can see, this is probably a quicker method compared to the watercolor because I don't have that same drying time need. I know I've just spoken of drying time with the blends, but it's not drying time, it's evaporation time. And the thing with the blends is you don't have to wait for it to fully evaporate before you add the detail on top. We can go in straight away now that I've got, and it's kind of nice that you can touch the other leaves and know that the color isn't going to spread. So I'm going to draw in the stem in the dark as well. Join that up and add some of those veins in. So I'm using the dark blend marker and I'm holding it very, very lightly over the top so that I'm just dragging the tip across. As you can see, I'm not always getting a solid line as a result of that, but I am getting these naturally lovely veins that perhaps are, I think, more aesthetically naturally pleasing. Now you could have used, these markers do come on a bullet point and a brush tip, and I could use that, but I find that I need a way lighter hand when I do the brush tip. And I don't know, I've just got a preference, but that's not to say that using the brush tip is wrong. I haven't pulled out all the blends. Silly me. Where are we? Daffodil, excellent. And I've got the Granny Apple Green. I'm going to just do the same. So you can see now that that's alcohol is evaporated, it's got a nice look to it. It's not as harsh, dark, light areas. They've blended in nicely, and then we've got that lovely detail on top, but not too harsh and not too, it's not like ink, as stamped on ink. It's a lot softer. I mean, you certainly can have the stamped on, and we've done that in this video series. It's just another different look and variation to use of your markers. Boy, is it humid here. Oops, no. I have not coped with the humidity. How is everyone else's weather? Yes, I've started talking about the weather. Feels a bit lame, but I think everyone is concentrating on what I'm doing here. Okay. And as you can see, here's just my tip. I hold both the markers with the end that I prefer to use in my left hand, and that way I've got them ready to go whenever I would like. The two colors, that is. And I don't know, it's just a method that of holding and having the markers ready to go that I have found that works for me really well. Because of the alcohol based of these markers, you don't want to leave the cap off. So I make it a very conscious effort to make sure that I place the cap on as soon as I'm done using the marker. My hand seems to be a bit less soft on this one, but that's okay. It's crafting, as long as we're all enjoying it. There is no harm. Now the flower, and the method is all the same. Again, light, dark. I like to start with the dark, and I'll start with the middle of the flower. I'm going to bring all of that as so. And with the blends, I do tend to go further up than I want the dark area, because as you're blending it with the light, it basically takes it down a bit to create that middle ground. And the stamping is a bit dark on this one for the blends, so you're not going to get that same blended out look as you do with the watercolor, as you can see. But it's still fairly no line, and I'll show you how we can deal with that once we color the whole thing in. And it's just basically adding some detail in the dark marker to kind of cover it up, or you can leave it if you like it there. Who says that you have to cover that up? It's a personal preference thing. So you can see this one's a lot more quicker and easier than the watercolor method of no line, but they each create a different look. Now there's this like bonus little inside petal. Ooh, be good if I put that down properly. And the other thing you can do to really differentiate the petals is add some of, use the color lifter a bit, which I will be, once I finish all of this. So I place the darker color in to the petal area. I might do, no, I still prefer working petal by petal, because the alcohol does evaporate as you put it down. I've explained this during the stamping blends lesson. You do want to work fairly quickly with these markers if you want to get that nice blended look, but you can reactivate the ink on the paper by adding another layer on top once all the alcohol has evaporated. But doing that is perfectly acceptable. You've got to know that your end color result will be darker, because the blends are a buildable color marker. Unlike regular textures or markers, if you start layering them on top of each other, they just become muddy and they can start ripping the paper. Whereas these, as you place the ink, it's translucent, so the color builds, and you've got to take advantage of that. So it's all about knowing your medium and knowing how to use it. Whew. Studio lights are getting warm. Very silent tonight. No questions, comments, please let me know. Love to hear from you, or even tell me about your day. Did anyone do anything exciting today? Or what your plans are for after this video. Let's have a chat. I mean, I'm quite happy colouring, and I can colour in silence too. Just feels a bit weird. My hubby's away. He's at a conference, and so we're missing him a bit. Not just a bit, a fair bit. Kids are counting down though. When we come home sometimes they think Papa's home because his car's there, and then we remember that Papa's not home. You love the colouring. Oh good. I have been told that watching colouring can be quite soothing. You're watching on the iPad and commenting. Hubby is in Japan, so he's also getting to do a bit of skiing while he's there. He sent me some pictures of the snow this afternoon. It was all very white, I have to say. Very white in Japan with the snow. Okay, so we're almost done. And then we can go back and add some detail. Lucky hubby, yes, very lucky hubby. Very lucky hubby. I've got to say, I am looking forward, Priscilla, to finding out where November on stage is. I know that's quite a while, but that's pretty much when I do my little getaways, is the on-stage trips, and I look forward to them. For those who are not familiar with Stampin' Up, I am a demonstrator, and Priscilla is too, and we often meet now at the demonstrator only event called On Stage. We normally would have one in April, but that is not occurring this year, though there will be some local events. So it'd be interesting to hear where the local events are and if I'll be able to get to them. So there we go. You can still see a bit of the stamping, but it's certainly not as obvious compared to the stamped one. If I go grab, where are they? Here they are. If I pull out the stamping blends, this one was the stamping blend using the ink, yellow ink. Let's see which way. There we go. That's orientation's correct. So this is using the stamping blend markers as well, but this stamped outline is being stamped in daffodil yellow. Sorry, my brain's working slow. And you can see it's a very different look now. It's an extremely different look. And if I pull out this one, that is with the black ink, and you're getting very different looks. And that is exactly why I've been doing this series, so that you can know what those looks can look like and to know how to do them, and so that you can choose what you feel is best for your project. There is no right or wrong answer, and I've repeated that multiple times. I am going to use the brush tip end, so I'm just going to go in and now add some detail. If I bring the stamp case in, you can see that the flower has those wisps, and I can still see some of them from the stamping underneath, and I'm simply using that as a guideline and adding some more, but it gives that extra depth. And as you can see, as I'm going around, it's blending in with the other alcohol that's already underneath, but it just gives it that wispy extra dimension. And again, just like the watercoloring that we started off the lesson with, thank you Priscilla for that lovely comment, it is buildable, and it's up to you how much you build. So I'm going to, because there's a bit of that center there, really like to build on that. And then I can take the other end and add some dots. Even though they're blending in, that texture will sort of remain there. Might colour that little triangle in the dark. And the other cool thing about these is that you can grab what's called the colour lifter. So it's basically clear, and when you add it, it removes a bit of the colour. Now you don't see immediate results straight away, it's very subtle, but if you just give it that. Oh, thank you for sharing, Priscilla. Appreciate that, love. So it's not going to be a super obvious thing what I'm doing right now, but over time, as that alcohol from the color lifter sits there, it will remove a little bit, kind of bleaches the color if you'd like, and that gives it that extra tonal variation. Hello, Christy. How are you, dear? And hello, Pauline. So that's that one. Shall we? Yes, let's put that into a card. As we have been, same layout each week, starting with some stamping dimensionals on the back of our flower. And removing the release paper. And adding that flower right here. And then we have the granny apple green leaf sitting. One second, add some liquid multi-purpose glue. And we add that green leaf here. And this is Sahara Sand paper cardstock, which I have done a top folding card already, and I stamped the leaves in Sahara Sand stamped off, just to give that. I'm not quite happy with the position there, but it's stuck down. So there's that. There's our first card all sorted. Some of that ink was quite heavy. So I'm going to bring in our watercolor one back in. Now that those layers have dried, we can finish off other petals that are next to it. So starting with a light color wash, for those who have joined us, you can see I am doing no line watercolor. So that means that in the process of watercoloring or coloring, the lines disappear. And that previous example was using stamping blends, and we did start the video off using inks and the aqua painter, but you need to have each section dried before you can start painting the section next to it, otherwise it'll just bleed into one big heap. So for that reason we've been breaking it up. The local events are going to be announced in May, aren't they? Renee, the local events are going to be held in May. So I'm hoping that Stampin' Up will announce the local events earlier than May, so we can plan that. You can add that. That one is touching a bit, so I'm a little hesitant to paint that right now. Adding the darker color and letting the wet on wet technique kind of take its course. And as you can see, as it dries, it does get that bit darker. Just wiping off my brush, and I'm going to, while we let that dry, I'm going to be grabbing some more ink, Bermuda Bay ink, to add in some more detail, because this is very much dried. Now as I add these details in, it's not bleeding into the color underneath. And there we go. The idea of the locals though, Renee, is that the local events are held in places where an on-stage couldn't be held because of numbers and its location and travel thing. And the idea is that people aren't traveling too far to these events. And they're reaching demonstrators who, because of those locations, wouldn't be able to easily travel to the major events of on stage. So I'm guessing less warning time as well, because the whole concept is that you're local. Oh, don't want that. I want the darker. So you can see how much life that has now, that leaf with that extra detail and it's because I've let it have some time to dry, and this new layer of watercolor isn't blending in, or bleeding should I say, into what we've previously put down. It might bleed a little bit, and it is starting to bleed, but it's certainly not bleeding as much as it did before. And if you really didn't want any bleed, you would have to let these dry. I would let them almost dry for a full day, but I can't have this video going for a full day. I could use the heat tool, but do you know what? I'm just really happy with the results as it is, and you're getting the concepts. That's the main thing, really. So those are all done. 2 leaves. Bring back the yellow palette and just finish off that last petal here. Grabbing some of the dark undiluted. This is daffodil yellow. And I'm going to start adding in some more detail to those drier petals, a bit like we did with the Stampin' Blends. Just almost painting in some of the outline, you could say, just like I did with the leaves. But it's not the same as a stamped outline for sure. And you could follow what the stamped outline did. I'm pretty sure there's some sort of detailing, and you can see it's starting to come a bit more alive with these details. The key with no line or colouring is the detail that you add on top. That is certainly a very important aspect of it. And then, as I've already said, if you're using the watercolouring method for it, to give it time to dry so that it has the ability to take on extra detail. You can see this one I've already done, and it's starting to bleed a little bit. That one is still very, very wet, but I will add some center detail here. It's very different to the Stampin' Blend method. And again, it just depends on what you want for your project. Remember, crafting is all about having fun, and that's something I've said throughout this video series. There is no single right or wrong answer. I'm going to leave that one at that point and start putting together my card. It's about the process. It's about the joy that you get and you give to another person when you hand them something that you've made from the bottom of your heart. And focus on that instead of any frustrations that you're thinking it doesn't look right, because there is no right or wrong. And I hope if that's the only thing you've learnt from this video series, I will be absolutely thrilled, because that's a very good lesson to have learnt. Adding that one in. I mean, I could have gone a bit. See, it's not perfect. I've got an uneven edge around that, but it's okay. It's all about the process. There. So that the other leaves are showing through. So there we go. That's 2 methods. You can certainly do this with pencils as well. And you could activate the pencils, or because we've got the watercolor pencils, you could activate them and blend that color in, or you can just use the pencils on its own. But I'm not going to be showing that because I think this video is long enough, and you're probably tired of hearing me talk. It's pretty much the same thing. Build up the color with the medium that you're using. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support across this Let's Talk About Colouring series. I've really enjoyed sharing all of them with you. And shall we have a quick look at all the cards? Just going to make some space on my desk. And I'm going to lift up. Lifted so much that the charger came out. I'm going to go backwards. This was the tonight's card. This was last week's, which was mixed medium. Let's see if I can, right on the border there. Excellent. Then we also had the part 2 of crystals, the pigment crystals, pigment sprinkles, and we use these as watercoloring as opposed to sprinkling, which we did 4. This was the sprinkling method of the pigment sprinkles, and we did wet on wet and then adding water on top. And then we did the same, I didn't finish that one, but we did the same using alcohol ink instead of water. Previous lesson to that was the Stampin' Write markers. We've got a few examples with this. Here we go. This one has got dots. It's not as obvious coloring. Now let's see, that was lesson 6. Lesson 5 was stamping blends. Here we go. Bit similar to what we did tonight. Lesson 4 was watercolor. Let me see. I've got my cheat sheets inside. Lesson 4, watercolor pencils. So I've got 4 examples. These are all watercolor pencils. 2 of them are using aqua painters and 2 of them are using the blender pens. What do we call these? Blender pen. What was that? Lesson 4. Oh, I've got another lesson 4 here. And here I've got Wink of Stella. I forgot about that. We had Wink of Stella as well with lesson 4. Lesson 3 was coloring pencil. That one is plain on coloring. This one we've did some cross hatching. So all of these are available to rewatch. Lesson 2 was ink pad / ink refills and using different applicators. So these were using the blend, using those inks and these pens. So it's filling up, isn't it? And some of these I have already. And this is still lesson 2. We're using the ink pad, but we used the aqua painter on those. I'm running out of space. Oh, look at all those examples. Same layout, same colors, different methods, and this is what I'm talking about. This is why I did this series, just trying to fit them all. And lesson 1 was stamping the color. So this is what it was just stamped. There we go. They're all in. Oh, yes, no, that one needs to go down a bit. They're all in, sort of. You get the picture. Thank you so much for joining me. I've had an amazing time. So happy for you to have been. I hope you have learned something from me and you have been an amazing audience. Next Monday night, I'm starting a new series of videos which will run for the rest of term 1 here in Australia, and that will be on fun fold techniques. So I'm still trying to come up with a fun name. Any suggestions? Let me know in the comments. So far I've got fun folding, fantastic fun folds. If you can think of a better title, let me know. Thank you so much and bye for now.